The first Ace Attorney case is one of the best cases in the series and hits every single one of the notes it means to with far greater impact than it seems to even intend. This has been kind of a tough one to write because I'm so enamored with this series, game, and case, and I didn't want to make anything unless I had something constructive and additive to say. I'm attracted to talking about Apollo Justice and about the later games in the series because they're more polarizing and interesting for me. Some of them haven't been in circulation long enough for people to get over there being sequels and appreciate them as they are, but I think Apollo Justice is just in that sweet spot with Dual Destinies approaching it. No one has any argument or hot take about 1-1, so perhaps it is actually a good candidate for discussion on the merit of it being so presupposed and taken for granted. Let's talk about this first case and try to take it apart gently to see the DNA of the series we all like so much. This is a masterpiece, but I think a lot of the tricks and stops it pulls are really subtle and cool. The main pillars that make this first case so good that I'll try to frame often are its animation, sound design, puzzle solving, and writing. I feel well qualified to talk about a few of these, but for animation and music, I have a couple of good videos from 8-Bit Music Theory and New Frame Plus, which are really nice and educational for me in being able to articulate why this game is such a home run. After this video, check them out and please give them some love. So first, let's paint the scene for the entrance of Ace Attorney 1. A rookie developer, Shu Takumi, after having varied success in lead positions on Resident Evil and Dino Crisis, is allowed a small team of 7 to work on a game set in court. The development of this game was extremely tense, and Shu Takumi likened it to walking on a tightrope. Management actually canceled the game after a prototype was not taken well by playtesters. Management was reportedly by Shu Takumi trying to convey the dire situation the game was in to the team, and it worked. The team came back with a tighter, more easily digestible form of the game, and it was greenlit. With such a small team, budget, and hardware space on the Game Boy Advance, the name of the game was being efficient. 4 cases were written in less than a year, and the game was released with pretty strong reviews and was successful enough to immediately have 2 sequels requested of Takumi, not by. The actual position of this case in the story is pretty interesting too. Takumi wrote the first case in which you solved the murder of your mentor, Mia Fey, as the real Case 1, after added what we know is this Case 1 as a prequel case, to flesh out Mia and Phoenix's relationship and to introduce some more connective tissue and introduction. It wound up being a really clever writing move. I really can't imagine the sequence any other way, and it seems very clear that this first case really thoroughly prepares you narratively and mechanically for the remainder of the game and series. We open on this little song that I like a lot, and a statue dripping with blood. We pan up to the gloved hand holding it and to the corpse on the floor with blood pooling around her head and passing through the cracks on the floor. A man is shown holding the weapon, looking for someone he could pin the crime on. This is good, smart writing. Frank saw it as not really an engaging villain, and the mystery surrounding this murder is centered on the evidence and the mechanics, not on who did it. Takumi mentioned in the first case that he wanted the player to focus on the fun of catching the criminal, not on the mystery of trying to deduce who did it. And for good reason. This case is half an hour long, and it wants to set itself up and show you that solving cases and defending your clients in court is fun. There's plenty of time for mysteries which are tangled, and there's a lot of time and space given to untangling them, but Ace Attorney 1 wisely gives itself lots of breathing room in this first case. The music goes silent as the clicking typeface tells us the date and setting. It's another real dunk for sound design. This is a really nice punctuation mark on scenes. I love this sound effect. The court lobby music fills up the space, incredibly full and composed. The court lobby illustration is nice, and the first character we see in pose is Mia Fey, who's designed wonderfully. Points for the illustration and animation. The pose work in this series is incredible, and the subtle animation Mia is given is really crisp. I love her little mole, her scarf, her magtama. She's my favorite character in this game. We tell Mia, our boss incidentally, that we actually do know the defendant in this case, our first case. There's a crashing sound effect, the screen shakes, and Mia does a surprise pose. Again, in terms of efficiency, a game composed of just drawings, text, and music has to be really clever, and beyond the chirping of the text mimicking the sound of voices and the subtle blinking and breathing animations, having a surprising moment punctuated with this very simple effect of a crash, white flash, and a screen shake gives Larry Butts the sort of manic entry that his character deserves, and most other visual novels wouldn't be able to present quite as well. Larry enters the frame immediately being too much. He's got the sparkly I beg emoji as tears stream down his face, and he holds his clutched hands up to his chin. It's expressive. It's one drawing with like 3 frames of slight animation, and arranged next to his first line of dialogue where he chokes back tears, closes one eye, and gives a thumbs up, asking for the death penalty. You immediately know who this guy is. A clown. His animation and posing is pretty funny, and he's not just immediately funny, but he's likable too. His girlfriend was the murder victim, and he's the suspect. You're defending your friend Larry Butts for free in your first case because you know he's innocent. Trouble follows him, and when something smells, it's usually the Butts. This is the driving force behind the series in a few lines of dialogue. Protecting people who need protecting. Protecting people who are maybe a bit too silly or foolish or defenseless to help themselves. One thing I can say though, it's usually not his fault. He just has terrible luck. So with that, we step into court. Keep in mind that this really fun, compact introduction is done in a minute or two. The heads in the gallery turn as some chatter is silenced by the gavel banging, another huge win in the sound design department, which is used in every subsequent game because this first game, just got so much perfectly on the first try. The theme for the courtroom is so good, the heavy focus on really good driving bass lines in these themes is so catchy. So we have 3 new sets of sprites to talk about. The judge, wonderfully animated, the perspective is good, his big beard and stern look with his kind of ditzy, clueless personality are a fun fit. Mia from the side is wonderful, her looking over and being like, dude, did you just say you don't know the name of the victim? Is wonderful. The prosecution, Winston Payne, is also a great character. I've gone on record saying that I think every iteration of this character is good in their utility. He's not cool or intimidating or engaging. This game is filled with characters like that, and which type of prosecutor should we face off in the first 30 minutes of the case? Is Edgeworth a good fit for this case? It is best to have someone who's older, vanilla, a little bit condescending, and who gets trounced in a clean half an hour. He has 2 poses, one that's totally neutral, and one that's hunched over, nervous. Again, I don't think the fact that this dude is basically wallpaper and doesn't attract a second look is a bad thing. And a prosecutor with a big personality, or any personality here, would be highly subtractive. His shrill objection is so surprising and funny. And lastly, the best and most variably posed character, Phoenix Wright. He's great. He's beyond great. His sprite design, posing, and animation is perfect. His neutral talking pose is confident. His defeated or incredulous look is really expressive, and the fact that I can't figure out how to classify it is really telling of all these poses' strengths. This is good for when he makes a mistake or when he can't believe a witness is what he's saying for 100 scenarios. He has one that's pensive with his finger up to his chin, one where he's shaking his head or nodding, one that's in disbelief with shock lines in front of his face, one tapping papers for when he finds a contradiction, one where he slams the desk accompanied by a sound effect and screen shake, one with his hands on his hips, confident, grins, holding his head with one hand for when he's taking a wild guess, makes a mistake, is embarrassed to admit something, a surprise animation for just the end of this case, close-ups for dramatic effect, and most importantly and iconically, the finger-pointing objection pose. I know this character with about 150 frames of animation and maybe 15 poses better than I do tons of fully voiced 3D models of characters who are static and uninteresting in what their body language and models convey about them. Put a pin in this argument. The prosecution calls Larry Butts to the stand, which is a nightmare for the defense team. Mia whispers to Phoenix that she hopes Larry doesn't do anything unfortunate. This is his first pose, cocky and defensive. Winston Payne asks him if he and the victim have broken up, and his sprite explodes with sharp teeth and clenched eyes. And after, he returns to sort of an embarrassed, sheepish neutral before exploding again. Larry's the perfect defendant, endlessly expressive, seemingly very guilty, and just really sort of coping badly. He compares their relationship to Romeo and Juliet, or Cleopatra and Mark Antony, all of which Phoenix points out incidentally died. It turns out Larry and the victim, Miss Sydney Stone, were not seeing each other anymore, and she had actually just returned from a trip overseas with a new partner. Payne provokes Butts by telling him that, in fact, she had a lot of sugar daddies and asked him what he thought about that. It happens in slow motion. Mia nudges us and tells us it'd be bad if he answered that, and we object. This kind of stuff is nice. It doesn't change the outcome of the case, but it feels like sparring a legal team trying to one-up your client. The next question is whether or not Larry visited the victim's apartment the day of the murder. We can try to send him a signal to tell the truth or to lie like a dog, but again, it doesn't matter. It is funny watching these two bozos try to communicate, and it does give us some practice at the type of thinking we'll need when it's our turn to cross-examine the witness. Speaking of, the next to testify is the eyewitness to the murder. Frank saw it. You can tell they're dipping their toes into the name pun pool. This guy should look familiar. Diegetically, he's just a witness, but we, the player, know that he's the killer. This is sort of the only time, to my recollection, that our understanding of the crime is different than Phoenix's, and it serves to build some confidence. This is the first case, and this is your guy. We get our first chance to cross-examine him. His testimony is somewhat long, actually, for a first trial, but the contradiction is blatant. Mia tells us that if our client is innocent, this man is lying. And there's the discrepancy on time. We can press him on everything, and it is fun to press him on everything. There's some back and forth between you and Payne. The hold it sound effect and speech bubble is incredible. The cross-examination song is really quite good. It has this effect of feeling like you're squaring off against someone and thinking hard. And lastly, Sahit's posing is good. It actually looks like a totally different dude at first because he's doing this little coy, unassuming pose where he shakes back and forth. If you need it, Mia tells you which statement is fishy and needs evidence to refute. As you present, Phoenix does his outstretched arm pose, shouts objection, and this nice little sound. Objection! The objection bubble shakes and the objection theme plays, and is a really nice reward for finding the contradiction. This entire case is really just taking you by the hand saying, see, this is easy and fun. It's fun to find contradictions. Sahit shakes back and forth a bit faster and Payne struggles to keep up. In the new testimony, Frank says he actually heard the time. It must have been on TV. So we get another cross-examination where Phoenix tells Mia more confidently, he's got it. I like seeing him grow into his own. This time, the contradiction is that there's actually a blackout during the murder. Hearing the time on TV was impossible. Frank flashes a new pose, arms outstretched and mouth open, shocked. He leaps back in shock and we see his hair flutter up. Again, just frames here, but there are little food and dopamine for finding these contradictions and feeling properly rewarded and fulfilled in finding them. The cross-examination theme this time has the same sort of bouncy heart as the previous cross-examination theme, but there's this new line in the front which is really frantic and driving with really unnecessarily good percussion. We present another contradiction. The murder weapon wasn't actually a clock, it was this statue. The corner theme comes out of nowhere and it is endlessly energetic, endlessly catchy. It doesn't ever get old. I never get tired of hearing it. It turns out the statue is a clock. It sounds when the neck is pushed in, but the cornered music doesn't recede. There's a new contradiction here. We still have him. He had to have gone inside the apartment to sound the clock, contrary to what he presented earlier. Sahit is visibly shaking now with his clenched fist outstretched and his teeth grinding. Finally, Phoenix sees what we already saw. Frank saw it, with the murder weapon in his hands and the victim's corpse under him. He pieces the entire mystery together. Frank entered the apartment to rob it, was surprised by the victim and killed her, blaming it on Butts, who he saw leaving earlier. Sahit in court, panics, grabbing his toupee, reeling back, and that's really funny. His collar and tie are now loose. He's screaming at the defense team and is totally broken down, and yet we don't have decisive evidence to prove it. We sound the clock, and it is indeed the precise amount of hours slow we expected, but it's not enough. Sahit demands that we prove it was slow on the day of the murder, an impossible request, and so this ends the examination of Frank Sahit. Phoenix gives up, unable to solve the case for probably the last time ever in this entire series that he needs saving, when Mia objects. She asks you to think outside the box. This is pretty funny having played Mia and knowing her skill level at this point as an attorney, because she must just be so blown that Phoenix showed up, solved the entire thing essentially, and then at the last contradiction, which is sort of a reasonable one, said, yeah, I don't know, and just gives up. So the clock wasn't actually 3 hours slow on the day of the murder. It was 9 hours fast. The victim had just returned from vacation in Paris, hence the time difference. Proof enough for you, Mr. Saw It? Or should I say, Mr. Did It? I love that Phoenix is like practicing his dad jokes before he adopts 3 girls. Frank Saw It collapses at the stand, foaming at the mouth, and our last triumphant little piece of dopamine. The court finds the accused, Larry Butts, not guilty. We return to the lobby with the victory music playing, satisfied in a really succinct, pleasant first trial. Mia congratulates us and actually seems a little bit impressed with us. Larry is less excited, declaring that his life is over. Even though he was declared innocent, he still loves and lost his beloved. Mia announces the headlines, Harry Butts, innocent. And yeah, okay, fine, you caught me. I'm not above a good Harry Butt joke. We get a cute little pose from Larry with his hand inside his sleeve, beaming. It's a good ending to this case. Turns out Butts made the statue for her as a present and gives Mia a matching one as a gift. We reassure Larry that he was important to Sydney in his own way after all. She did travel with the thinker clock that he made her. We get what we don't know to be our last words from Mia Fey. I hope you see the importance of evidence now. Also, hopefully you realize things change depending on how you look at them. People too. We never really know if our clients are guilty or innocent. All we can do is believe in them. And in order to believe in them, you have to believe in yourself. Right. Listen. Learn. Grow strong. Never let go of what you believe in. Never. Mia asks Phoenix out to dinner and drinks, which I can't help but think is romantic. It ties the case with a somewhat sad bow. 2 people who never really got an opportunity to fall in love with each other. This game and series has a knack of kicking you in the stomach with these little barely animated 2D characters. I know plenty of games that are motion captured and fully voice acted in stunning 4K resolution that I know and care about way less than the 3 main characters of just this case. Visual media has the authority and power to show you exactly what their character, setting, and mood looks like, but in a game where you do the deductions in your head and paint the pictures and expressions you see and the sparse lines of dialogue you get, the resulting product from less is so rich and nuanced. This first case is really a prologue, and to set up all it sets up, to get right on the first try that which 7, 10 games after emulate, and it's a miracle, and it is a testament to the power of creating art, especially when you're walking a tightrope the entire time. Thank you so much for watching.